Welcome to the Fish House Nation podcast. We are at the St. Paul Ice Show in St. Paul, Minnesota, and this is really the mecca of ice fishing. Just about everyone who is anyone in ice fishing is here, and today we're talking to another podcaster, Barb Carey. Barb, thanks for coming on. Tell us about your show. What's it called, and where can people find you if they want to listen to your show?
Well, we have the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. Myself and my partner, Angie Scott, have been running that for just about a year now. And she lives in Nashville and I live up in Wisconsin, so we can cover a lot of ground, everything from ICAST to the Bassmaster Classic. And we kind of get around and we want to tell stories to inspire women and interview a lot of women that are makers and shakers in the industry. And we're having a great time.
So, Barb, I've listened to your show. I really enjoyed it. It's fun to go on there and hear a different perspective, because so many of these shows are run by men and they're kind of telling a story by a man's perspective. Why do you think it's important for people to hear the story from a woman's perspective?
Well, I think the big thing is, one of the sayings we have is, if she can do it, I can do it. And when women see someone that's similar to themselves achieving something or having some type of adventure, a lot of times it resonates, and I'm like, hey, if they're doing it, I can do it. And that's the kind of inspiration that can spark people. And, through the course of my lifetime, I worked as a nurse, I worked as a police officer, and now for the last 14 years I've been working in the fishing industry. And I can honestly say that I've changed more lives through fishing than I have in either of those other caretaking positions that I had. So I find that really interesting. But, fishing does have an impact on people, and living outdoors and hunting and experiencing nature, and those are all wonderful things.
Yeah, what's kind of a story that you can tell me right now that's like the top of mind about someone that you've brought into fishing?
Well, it's someone who only fished with their male partner for a long time, and they were never able to really make any decisions. So they ended up joining a women's fishing club and started participating with us. And it's like all of a sudden all these light bulbs started going off for her. It's like, oh, I could fish for whatever species I want, or I could pick what baits I want, or I could drive the boat. And once women kind of improve their skills, in an atmosphere that's really conducive to their learning style, it's very empowering for them, and I got another call one day that said, I used to fish with my husband all the time and we really had fun, but now he's disabled, I don't have anyone to go with. So these are kind of things that, it just kind of creates opportunities that, it's hard as a woman just to go out by yourself if you don't know anyone, especially ice fishing, because you just can't go try it because there's so much gear involved. It's not like going down to the riverbank and taking a cast. I mean, you need a certain amount of gear to be able to go out ice fishing. So we've seen this wave of women that have started ice fishing, and it has grown by leaps and bounds in the past 10 years.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you're doing. You have what you're calling the Woman Ice Angler Project. Tell us about that and what you're doing there.
Well, that started about 6 years ago. I'm a ice team pro for Clam Outdoors and work for a couple companies as a pro ice angler. And I've been creating ice fishing classes and events for women for about 14 years. And I see the numbers just skyrocket from when we started to where they are right now. And I see these women buying gear and buying suits and buying ATVs and trailers and hard houses. They're spending a fortune. But when the catalogs would come out in the fall, there would be no women ice anglers photos anywhere. You just never saw anything. It's like a lot of the companies and the marketing materials weren't really staying up to speed with the reality of their customers. And that started to really kind of rub women the wrong way. So I kind of gathered some media friends. I'm also a writer, and I know photographers and radio personalities, and we started a project called the Women Ice Angler Project just to kind of create those images and that content to be able to give to companies to say, hey, okay, here it is, now you don't have an excuse. And since then, we've been in big box stores like Gander Mountain, big posters of women ice anglers, and it's kind of changed the landscape in some of the marketing materials, although there is really a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've seen really is in the apparel. More and more apparel really geared for women and not just men's stuff with pink accents or purple accents. Like, they're making apparel that is really designed for women now, which is kind of cool to see.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a topic of conversation all the time, and it's like not only the suits, but boots and gloves and everything else. And they want function. They don't want something that's pinkified. For so many years, they would come out with a pink women's fishing rod, but it would be crap. It would be really poor quality. Women couldn't feel the bite, and then they'd get frustrated because they would be cold. Like the men's ice fishing boots would be 1,500 grams of thinsulate, and the women's would be 800. Well, that doesn't even make sense. Mm-hmm. So they're finally understanding that, they're here to stay, they have money to spend, and they're demanding these quality gear. It's not perfect by any means, but it's a lot better than it used to be.
What is it about ice fishing that you think resonates with women? Why do they pick it up? Why do they enjoy it?
Well, winter is long, and when you decide how you want to choose your life, you can sit in your house and complain about the elements and the weather and what's happening, or you can get out there and participate in it. And I tell you, when you're out there on the ice, it's kind of like being on the moon. You hear sounds that you don't hear anywhere else, like the making ice. It sounds like these magical whales that are bellowing in the background, and the crystals of the ice and the snow, glittering, and those little mini rainbows that form, and the sting of the cold on your cheeks. I like that. I love that. You can walk anywhere, and that crunching sound is, and it's kind of like a camping thing. Ice fishing can be very social. A lot of these big hub shacks that they have out now, you have your little village of people, and it takes teamwork. Women like going in groups. There's not too many women that are just going out solo, even though they probably could if they wanted to, but it's kind of like a sense of community. And I think that's why these women's fishing clubs and women's fishing groups are kind of being so successful and growing so fast, is because women feel like they're part of something. Just like for years, guys going to hunting camp. That there was something about going to hunting camp or fish camp, or fishing with your buddies on opening weekend trips. Those things are part of a subculture that women are just finally starting to get to that party. And that's why they're eating it up so much, because it is really, wanting to be a part of something, and there's nothing better than playing outside, even as a grown-up.
So, Barb, we're having you on. You're a writer, you're a podcaster, you do a lot of different things, but you're a fishing guide in Wisconsin, and that's really what we wanted to talk to you about today, was your experiences in Wisconsin and some of your favorite lakes, because there's a lot of ice fishing content, and a lot of it is really targeted towards Minnesota just because the culture and what we have there.
Right.
But we really love to talk to you about Minnesota, or about Wisconsin lakes. And what are some of your favorite places for ice fishing and for Wisconsin?
Well, we have such a diverse fishery, and I got to start with the Great Lakes, because we do an annual trip down to the Milwaukee area to ice fish for these huge brown trout, and there is nothing like it. I mean, that's a whole experience. You're fishing with skyscrapers in the background, and open Lake Michigan you're on the horizon, but you're on ice and catching these giant brown trout. I mean, and then in contrast, you can go all the way up to the northern part of Wisconsin and fish on Lake Superior out of Ashland, Wisconsin. Again, I mean, one fishing outing I had there, I caught 12 species in one day.
Wow.
So that kind of diversity of the fishery is what I like, and it's kind of like a cycle. You start, you can go whitefish fishing in Green Bay, and the Wisconsin River that runs through the state of Wisconsin has a lot of flowages that have been dammed up, and they have a slot limit, where you got to release all the fish 20 to 28 inches for walleye, and you are able to catch a lot of really big fish on some of those. I fished Castle Rock Lake and the Petenwell flowage and places like that. Big crappies, big walleyes, and that's some fun fishing there.
Yeah, how do you fish something like that? I mean, I actually had a cabin on Petenwell.
Oh, you did?
And we did some ice fishing out there, and It was such a puzzle to me because it's a big piece of water. It's really about the same depth throughout most of it, but you've got that channel running through there, and it's just kind of a puzzle to figure out. So when you're fishing a flowage like that with really a pretty strong current running through it, the channel is definitely defined through that lake. How do you put something like that together?
Well, I think that, it's really gotten a lot easier with navionics on your phone. I mean, I remember drilling augers empty of gas twice in one day trying to find these channel edges because it was guesswork. But now with the Navionics app on your phone, you can get to these little corners and outside turns and inside bends and find these spots on the spot that really are holding fish. One of the key is to fish in the summer. I mean, if you're able to mark a lot of those brush piles that are on the corners or the points of this channel that goes through, that's where the crappies are going to be holding. And it's, that's part of the puzzle. And whenever you're fishing a river like that, it can change every year. You find a really good spot and then there's a washout or something and it'll change everything. So I find it almost easier to fish because the channel is so defined. Mm-hmm. They're going to be somewhere near there.
Sure. So you talked about fishing Milwaukee earlier. What kind of gear does someone need to do something like that?
Well, the big thing that people use in Wisconsin, the people that's their thing, they're using the automatic fishermen.
Okay.
But those, I don't even believe they're legal in Minnesota. I think it's a Wisconsin thing. It's an automatic hook setting device, so you put your jig rod in there and the fish take it and it pops and people run like heck, to get there because tip-ups, those trout and salmon are so smart that they'll spit that out before they get very far. So my best success has been just jigging a jig rod on with a little gold spoon. In fact, the biggest one I ever caught, I was sitting in a hub shack and we were actually going to record a podcast. So I had my rod on my chair and I had the little gold spoon in the water, but my Vexlar was in the water, and I'm dinking around with my podcast gear, and all of a sudden I see this huge red mark coming up from the bottom going to my bait, and I saw, just as my rod just went, I grabbed it in the nick of time, and I had about a 45-minute fight with a huge brown trout. It was so fun.
What's that like out there? What kind of culture is that like? Because I can only imagine. I know there's a big shore fishing culture down there, and I can imagine those people are out on the ice during the winter time. So how many people are out there with you when you're out there?
Well, it's changed recently, with all the social media stuff and some of the big name guides that are out there doing videos and stuff. It's not hard to figure out where they are, so there's not a lot of space, and there's not a lot of ice. It's not like you're fishing a big lake, but it's still something that, there's never been a time I've gone there that there hasn't been a place to fish. It's still, you gotta get downtown Milwaukee. It's kind of a trek and it's kind of a specialized thing except for the people that live nearby, but there's room for everybody. It's the same thing applies. You don't want to be hugging anyone too close, give everyone plenty of room, and a lot of it's luck of the draw. Some spots are probably a little higher producing than others depending on where you are, but midweek I would recommend, really, if you're going to go. Weekends are a lot busier.
Sure. Wisconsin also has a lot of places like what we see in northern Minnesota where you're kind of up, in places that are far off and maybe little towns here and there, but for the most part it's not quite wilderness, but it almost feels that way. What are some of your favorite kind of up north inland lakes?
Well, I actually cross over into the UP of Michigan quite a bit, and you talk about untapped resources up there. I mean, northern Wisconsin, the whole Minocqua area, that kind of gets pretty hard. It gets a lot of tourists, but if you just go a little bit farther to the northeast, you're into the UP of Michigan, and some of those lakes are like ghost towns. And I tell you, there's one body of water, which is kind of a flowage, which is called the Michigami Reservoir. And that is kind of an electric company thing that's dammed up, and several lakes and rivers have kind of combined to make this water, and the fishing is unbelievable. But, between the few local people that go there, it is not a tourist destination at all. I catch 14-inch crappies and, 11-inch bluegills and walleyes and pike and nice perch. So those are the kind of places that I like going. I grew up near there, so I have family there. So a lot of times if I'm going to point A to point B, I'm going to fish the spots that are in between there.
What do your clients think when they go to a place like that?
Well, I've taken groups of women up there in the summer mainly, and it's like, you think you're in Canada, and it's so inexpensive, and it's not far. So it's kind of like I don't even know why I'm talking about it because I want it to remain a secret, but now I'm talking about it, so I'm letting the cat out of the bag. But it's the thing about ice fishing. I know I love coming to Minnesota because you guys' gills are like these hybrid gills that you have around here. We fished Ottertail County for crappies and bluegills one year for the Women Ice Angler Project, and I've never seen gills and crappies like that. I mean, those are the big foreheads, and the great big hybrids. But so it's nice having destinations to go to, and I've written several articles about that and encouraging people to get away from their same lake they fish all the time and go exploring a little bit. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I fished Winnipeg last year for the first time, and with social media and information out on podcasts and Facebook and other social media platforms, there's a lot of information to be had, and it doesn't take long. Perch fishing on Lake Ogibic, that's another big one that we've done a few times, which is also in the UP of Michigan. So it's like species and destination specific trips. Let's go perch fishing. So then you find that perch destination, or walleye or whitefish or whatever. And I think that's a trend that's really happened more recently, just with all the information that's available so easily.
All right. I'm going to make this really difficult for you. You can only fish for one species the rest of your life. What's it going to be?
I'd have to say walleye.
Yeah.
And when I started out, and this is part of some of the reason why I'm so passionate about teaching women to fish, is because when I started and there was no other women, I didn't have anyone in my life that was a good angler that was teaching me, like a mentor that was close. So I found myself flailing, and asking a lot of like older guys and stuff. And in that time of the whole culture, they weren't sharing anything. They wouldn't tell anybody anything. It was that big secret. Everything's a secret, So it took me really a long time to develop my skills. And I remember I would buy a bottle of champagne in the spring, and I would keep it in the refrigerator until I caught a walleye. And sometimes it wasn't until pretty late in the summer till I caught a walleye, and then there was all this rejoicing, oh my god, I caught a walleye, Obviously that's changed, but I still remember those pinnacle moments for me, like my biggest walleye the first big walleye I ever caught ice fishing. I remember that. It was 26 inches, when now it's like small compared to what I've caught since then. But that fish meant so much to me because I was by myself. I was really, trying really hard and having a lot of failures. And then I caught this 26-inch walleye, and it was the biggest walleye I'd ever seen. And I got it mounted, and still that's the only fish I've ever had mounted, is that one 26-inch walleye. And it means more to me because it was like the point where, okay, I did it, I got it. And so, that's kind of still holds a special place in my heart. I love spring walleye fishing in the river. I love ice fishing for walleye, and I love shore fishing for walleye. I mean, I have a nice boat. I can go out on Lake Michigan and everything else, but there's something about standing on the side of the Wisconsin River shore fishing for walleye too. So,
what's your best advice for somebody who's just getting started into ice fishing and wants to get to maybe a point where you are in their knowledge base?
Well, the big thing is to kind of get hooked up with people that go and learn, and I think that keeping an open mind. I mean, all the knowledge I've gained over the years, I still go in and pretending like what can I learn today, and different like search baits. Don't get stuck. A lot of times, you get the mistake I see new anglers make is they drill a hole and they sit there. If there's no fish there, move. You got to keep moving, and all the gear is related to mobility on ice now. I mean, it's so easy to be mobile. You don't have to sit in one spot, and just read and ask and go with people who are going to help you become better, and then pay it forward and bring someone else new. And the more you go, the better you get.
Is there something that you want to talk about that I didn't ask you?
Well, I just think for women that are out there, there's more resources than ever, so a lot of people are hesitant to take that first step. Just take that first step and make that connection, join a fishing club, get involved. We have a Facebook page through our podcast, which is we have a regular page and then a group page, and there's places where people can ask questions and feel safe. I know that social media and Facebook a lot of times is a double-edged sword. You put yourself out there and someone says something hurtful, and you kind of withdraw and not get too engaged in it. But there are places for women that they can feel totally safe and comfortable and not worry about any question they think is stupid, and really have a lot of support around their adventures in the outdoors. So don't hold back.
Yeah, where can people find you and more about you?
Well, the podcast is The Woman Angler and Adventure, and we're on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Waypoint TV, YouTube. We do a lot of videotaping of our shows. And then I got a Captain Barb Carey Facebook page, a Barb Carey, and WI Women Fish and Women on Ice. We have a lot of outlets out there just to be able to give women just a resource that they could really benefit from.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Barb, for being on the show, and thanks for doing what you do, and we appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.